Good evening, everybody. It is now 7:15, so we'll start the meeting. There are a couple of councillors who are not here yet, but I suspect they are on the way and stuck in traffic. So yes, welcome to planning meeting this evening, the first meeting of the new year. Welcome to everybody here, to officers and members, and also members of the public and those who are watching on our YouTube channel. We'll start the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence. We have one apology this evening. It's from Councillor Holland, and he is being substituted by Councillor Prime. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interest relating to items of the agenda having regard to the Code of Conduct? That is a no. So no interest to declare. Move on now to item 3 on the agenda, which is minutes of the previous meeting. Members, I have before me the draft minutes of the meetings of the Planning Committee on the 12th of November and the 3rd of December. Is it your wish?
Those both states, Madam Chairman, is a true reflection.
And seconded by Councillor Monday. And all those in favour of me signing the minutes as correct record? Thank you, members. I'll just do that. Okay, item 4 on the agenda is public question time. We don't have any registered speakers to speak under this item. So we'll now move on to the planning applications. Actually, before I do, here are our remaining 2 members of the committee. I'll just, for the benefit of all members and also for anybody watching on the YouTube channel, item 5C on the agenda, which is application number 24/01817 out. Builders Yard, rear of 138 to 142 South Street, Braintree. That application has been withdrawn and won't be determined this evening. So I'll just let Councillor Powers and Councillor Busment put their coats. Do you have... That's all right. Probably traffic, I suspect. Yes, as usual. Do you want to have any interest to declare on the items in the agenda? Neither of you. Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to the planning applications to be determined this evening. The first one is item 5A on the agenda. This is application number 23/00703, Reserve Matters application, REM, land of east of Broad Road, Braintree. We do have a speaker on this item, who is Mr. Pritchard, if he'd like to come to the table and switch on the microphone, and 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good evening, members. Thanks for your time this evening, and officers for your ongoing hard work and the preparation of your detailed report. We're pleased to see this initial Reserve Matters application for the wider East of Broad Road allocation is recommended for approval, and there are no outstanding objections from technical consultees. The application itself is for the initial sections of Spine Road from and pedestrian and cycle infrastructure from Broad Road and from the A131. Care has been taken to work proactively with officers to ensure the proposals are consistent with the high quality principles secured through the outline application and a design code approved during that application. This includes tree-lined streets, 3.5 metre wide pedestrian cycleways to encourage modal shift, and appropriately wide roads to future-proof opportunities for bus access. Approval of this application is a critical one, as it will lead to the site being acquired by a nationally recognised house builder who is committed to bringing forward the allocation at speed as a master developer. This will unlock the allocation for 1,000 houses, including affordable, employment opportunities, education facilities, and will also help boost the council's 5-year land supply for housing. We welcome the clear recommendations to improve the application from officers, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have this evening.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the officer's presentation, which is going to be given by Neil. Neil?
Good evening, members. So this is an application for approval of reserve matters in respect of two stretches of highway, one on the western side of the site coming off Broad Road and one off the eastern side coming off the A131. So as members will remember, the outline application actually approved access at those 2 points. So this is approval of the reserve matters, so appearance, layout, scale and landscaping for those first stretches of road coming into the site. So these are this broadly is the site here. So you've got Broad Road coming along the western side, the A131, the Braintree bypass on the eastern side, and then what we're looking at here is two accesses or two lengths of highway coming into the site. So here off Broad Road and here off the A131. So just for sort of context, before we go into the more detailed elements, so this is just showing where these access points are within the sort of parameter plan, which shows the overall development framework for the site. So you can see it's a broadly triangular site with the main roads to the east and the west. And then we've got the river and the park down the bottom here. And then you've got the development parcels running around the site with a local centre, a school site, and an open space within the heart of the site. So just in terms of what we'd approved previously, so this was the drawing showing the access coming in off Broad Road. So you can see Broad Road being changed to create a right-hand turn lane as you come in. This access point was agreed here. And then this is the spine road design for what's termed Area 1 within the application documents. So this is the approved access up here. And then this is the first length of carriageway coming into the site. You can see, you can see grass verges to either side, footway and a footway cycleway to either side. You can also see the crossing point here, just where it's envisaged that when the residential parcels come forward, that there's a potential for small private drives with residential access coming off either side. And then looking at the other side of the site, this is again the approved drawing from the outline permission. So this is the roundabout which will be constructed on the A131 and the first length of road coming into the site. And then this is what we've got in terms of the reserve matters, so the first length of carriageway coming into the site. So again, you can see the same arrangement, so 6.75 metre wide carriageway, 3 metre grass verges either side, and then the pedestrian footway and the foot cycleway to either side. So we appreciate that members are always concerned about the loss of trees and hedges, and regrettably that is required here. But just to make the point that what we're looking at here with this application is the first lengths of road coming into the site. So there's no additional trees or hedges being proposed to be removed as a result of this application. So there were obviously trees and hedges which would need to be removed to facilitate the accesses, but those access points have already been approved. So we're not reporting any additional losses or trees or hedges being lost which weren't previously considered and approved by the council. One of the reserve matters for these sites is the landscaping. So you can see we've got a landscape drawing showing how the applicant envisages that being brought forward. So this is the Broad Road side. So there's some sort of ornamental shrub planting as a sort of feature access or feature as you come in. And then trees being planted, so street trees being planted here with a sort of avenue arrangement with that sort of rhythm and regularity as you come through, and the design code envisages that that will continue as you come through the site. And then a slightly smaller stretch of carriageway being shown at the other end. But again, you can see the verge, I was going to say the veg, sorry, thinking about my Christmas lunch still. The verge showing here to be sort of wildflower seeded. So that's good in terms of the maintenance regime, but also good in terms of biodiversity. But again, you've got the street trees and the sort of avenue planting. Within the application that was submitted, there were details showing how the trees will be planted, how they'll be anchored and supported, and sort of tree root protection measures being put in place. officers didn't have, as planning officers I should say, sorry, didn't have any issues with what was being proposed. This was what was envisaged by the design code, as was the tree type that the applicant specified. However, the Highway Authority have raised a concern about the council approving the tree planting details, like as shown on this drawing, and the species ahead of the Highway Works Agreement being approved by the Highway Authority. Both the applicant and planning officers would like to see a developer have the ability to get the spine road adopted by the Highway Authority in the future. So what we're trying to do, whilst we can't require it's adopted, we want to try and make sure that it's that the possibility of it being offered for adoption and being adopted is there. So what we're recommending is we're approving some of the details of the landscaping. So if we just go back to the previous drawing, so we'd be approving this drawing, which is showing, you know, trees being planted within the verge at these sorts of spaces. But what we're not approving is the species of a tree or the planting details here. These may be the details that end up being approved, but what we want to do is make sure that the Highway Authority are comfortable with all of those details as they're worked up through the Highway Works Agreement, which would allow the road to be adopted if it was built. So what we're looking to do is recommend approval, but with some of these details around the landscaping to be covered by condition, so that the planning authorities still have the ability to consider and approve the details, but that's done in connection with the Highway Authority as part of the Highway Works process. So this is just an image of the tree that was being suggested by the applicant. This is one of the trees that was included within the design code that we approved as part of the outline permission. So I've just put some details there with regards to the tree type from the Royal Horticultural Society. So the planning officers that assess the design code, the urban design consultant that we use, and the landscape officers were all happy with this as a street tree. So then just moving on, just in terms of a couple of photos to show the context. So anybody who's familiar with the Braintree bypass will be aware of the lay-by as you come up the hill towards the High Garrett roundabout, coming up towards the top here. So this is the location of where the roundabout would be formed coming in, and this is just a photo showing the inside of the hedge and the site. This is what the entrance will be coming in. And then on Broad Road, this is just a sort of general picture showing the area where the access would be formed coming in. And then this is just looking from within the site, looking back out towards the houses on Broad Road. So that's where the road will be coming in on that side. So just in terms of a summary, this is part of a larger site which obviously benefits from outline planning permission. We've already approved the access through the outline permission. What we're looking at doing here is approving some further details with regards to the road coming into the site. We've assessed that against the design code that we approved as part of the outline permission. The proposals are consistent with that. There's no conflict there, and therefore we're happy that this is achieving the quality that we were looking for when we were granting permission originally. As I've said, what we want to do is make sure the spine road can be offered for adoption by the Highway Authority when it's built. So some of the technical design details around the carriageway and the planting and the maintenance of the planting will be subject to conditions which are included within the recommendation. There was one additional point which I didn't put on the summary, but just to explain, you'll have seen that there's a condition around a soil resource condition or a soil resource plan. So just, we have explained it in the report, but just by way of context, because of the size of development, this was an EIA development, so there was an environmental statement which was submitted with the outline application. What the environmental statement does is considers the potential environmental impacts arising from the development and how those impacts can be mitigated. One of the issues that the environmental statement raised was soil quality, and it was considered important to try and make sure that the quality of the soil on the site was retained so far as possible, so that it was a suitable medium for growing and landscaping in the future. So what we've done here is we've seen a report from a soil specialist which has explained that they think the topsoil can be stripped, stored and then reused in an appropriate manner, so mitigating the risk of the soil becoming, the quality of the soil deteriorating. So we think providing that process can be followed, this particular potential environmental impact can be mitigated. So we've got a condition on to require that. We don't usually put this type of condition on, but it was something which was flagged up as a result of the EIA, or the environmental statement. So that's the reason that the condition was on the outline permission, and why that's come up within this recommendation tonight. But I thought it was worth just explaining that, because it's something which we don't usually consider as part of applications. But officers are happy with the details that the applicant has put forward. We see this as an important stepping stone towards the site coming forward for development, hopefully in the not too distant future from a housing delivery point of view. But we wholeheartedly recommend the application, but obviously if members have any questions, I'll be happy to try and help. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Over to you, members who'd like to go first. Councillor Spray.
I wasn't necessarily expecting to go first, Chairman, but I'm happy to do so. I think this is relatively uncomplicated. It already has outline permission. And this is, as Neil has said, it's almost an additional application for us this evening to look at some of the details of the access which have been approved. It makes sense for me that that the details of the planting be deferred for a little while longer until the applicant has confirmation from Highways that they're happy with the arrangements being proposed. So it makes sense to do that. I just think we need to be confident that the planting that is suggested, well, it doesn't have to be exactly as we've seen this evening, but that it is, it is of good quality and is maintained, which is important. But other than that, I personally see no other reason to dispute anything in the report this evening. I'll leave it at that for the moment. Thank you.
Any other member wish to make any comment? Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a bit concerned about the process here, where county effectively, and we're going to see this in a later application on the agenda as well, are effectively saying we can't choose the trees. And from what I understand, this would then be left to officers to decide. So that's not that I'm saying officers will get it wrong, but it's taking away our ability as members to be sure about what the trees are, which I think is regrettable. And so my first question is this now a process we're going to get for every similar application like this? Second thing is this choice of trees. They're fine trees, but, and as you and I have discussed, Madam Chairman, I'm not against ornamentals sometimes, but default I think should be natives. And again, the application we've got later on in the agenda does propose natives for some of the street trees. We don't have an actual number in the agenda of the number of trees that are going to be lost, and I have asked this before. I couldn't see the tiny detail on there of the numbers. It would be useful in these agendas to say we're going to lose 4 of these, 3 of these and 7 of those, make it really clear. And my final question is, in paragraph 11.3.4, I wasn't sure whether that was saying we're going to fully mitigate for the loss of the trees along the roads, along Broad Road and the A131. So can we be sure that we're going to fully mitigate for those losses? And my final comment is about the new roundabout on the A131. I think that's going to be interesting, given the nature of that road and all the other roundabouts we're putting in this general area, like in Cressing. I think we're going to get a hell of a lot more peak time queuing, but on the other hand, it will slow traffic down. So swings and roundabouts, Madam Chair.
Can I just ask? Neil, would you like to come back on some of these points? I think some of them obviously relate really to the outline, but let you come back on them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for the questions. So if we go through in the order, with regards to the process, we're not trying to remove members' ability to agree planting, but what we're trying to do is remove the need for, well, we're trying to remove the situation where a developer might be trying to get a road adopted and then can't because we've approved something which the Highway Authority won't adopt, or then an application having to be varied to try and change the tree details. So I mean, in an ideal world, we would have a process in place with the Highway Authority where we could agree the tree planting at this stage, but unfortunately the Highway Authority are saying that they won't agree it outside of the Highway Works agreement, and as the applicant on the later items will say, that's quite a long process which they can't start until there's a planning permission in place, so it's a little bit sort of chicken and egg. I would say with regards to the trees here, our starting point as officers would be the trees that were approved in the design code, which was approved by the committee when the outline permission was granted, and I've certainly said that to the highway officer in my conversation. So I would hope we'd be looking at the trees that were approved within the design code, but like I said, I can't guarantee that. With regards to the details of the trees lost, so I guess that's my fault. Apologies. I hadn't included it because the tree loss was reported in the outline permission, and because we weren't removing any more, I didn't think to carry the detail forward. But so apologies for that, for not including it and making it clearer for members. In terms of the mitigation of the loss of the trees, I mean the intention with this planting isn't to try and mitigate the loss of the trees at the accesses. This is just setting out how the spine road will be treated, so those trees will go through, but certainly looking across the development of the site, and it's up to 1,000 houses and a local centre and so on, there'll be extensive scope for planting in the future. And then on the roundabout, I wasn't involved in the outline application and the discussion, but yeah, I can imagine there might be some challenges around building it and how the roundabout operates, but that's not sort of the matter before us because we've approved that. But hopefully that's come back on the questions or issues that you raised, Councillor Abbott.
Councillor Bass-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On the very point of the roundabout, can I ask what stage this roundabout will be built or developed or whatever? Because one thing it will do is slow the traffic down, and there are many accidents on that road. So that is, like Councillor Abbott said, it's good and it's bad. I can only see good at the moment of it slowing the traffic down. However, I am well aware of a roundabout that was erected by the developers very close by that shut the road for an extraordinary amount of time and inconvenienced a lot of people, and it was then opened again and then it was closed again, and that caused so much grief. If anything like that happened on this road, it would be devastation for all of the users, because that road, as members who use it will know, is constantly stacked back anyway. So to have that road closed would be a devastation. So I'm assuming this is all going to be planned and done properly this time. Thank you.
So I'd be happy to leave the Highway Authority officers who will deal with the road booking and that sort of thing. I think without being a sort of highway engineer and knowing in any detail how it would be built, I think because the road and the roundabout is sort of coming into the site, I think that you have the ability of trying to, or they'll be able to build part of it offline, away from the running traffic, and then in stages it will work through. So there'll obviously be some disruption. There may be some overnight closures perhaps as things are connected, but I wouldn't automatically have in mind there'd be a complete closure. With regards to when it goes in, there's a phasing plan. A phasing plan which is approved. I can't remember off the top of my head when the phase and the roundabout would go in, but it will be considered as part of that. But hopefully we wouldn't have a repeat of the problems that you referred to, Councillor Bass-Flint.
Thank you. And apart from that, Madam Chairman, I can't see a problem, and there's been no objections from anybody else, so I'm quite happy to move it.
Okay, does anybody else want to make any comment on this application? In that case, Councillor Bousford has moved that we approve the application. And Councillor Sprague again, second. Okay, all those in favour of granting this application? Abstentions? Sorry, I should have said against, and then abstentions. Thank you. Application has been granted. Thank you. So I'll now move on to the next application this evening. This is application 5B on the agenda, application number 24/01550. This is at Broadfield Nursery, Broad Road, Braintree, and we do have a speaker on this application, I believe, who is Mr. Boother. If you'd like to come to the table and pop on your microphone, and then.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal before you seeks to deliver a high-quality residential park home development, taking into consideration the site being previously developed land, which has been and continues to be in retail/commercial use. The proposal seeks to provide up to 15 high-quality lodges for permanent residential occupation. The proposed development can include suitable landscaping and open space, and seeks to use the existing access already in use for the former garden centre, nursery and the existing bungalow to the rear. The site does not form part of any protected site or designation. The site is located partly within and partly outside the development boundaries, and therefore it's acknowledged that the proposed development would conflict with policy LLP1 of the local plan, despite the brownfields status, despite the site's brownfield status. The park homes, which are an established form of low-cost housing, would provide a significant contribution to the council's housing supply and would accord with the aim of the MPPF to significantly boost the supply of housing. Landscaping can improve the appearance of the site for the overall benefit of the character and appearance of the wider area, and we consider that the development would be in accordance with the development plan in all other regards. We consider that the development would not result in detrimental impacts upon the visual and neighbouring amenity of the area, ecology, landscape or traffic impacts, and the benefits of the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh any potential adverse impacts, and we respectfully request that you overturn the officer's recommendation on this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. So we'll now move on to the officer's presentation, which is going to be given by Janine.
Thank you. Sorry about that. This application. Bear with me a second. This application seeks planning permission to change the use of the land for the siting of 15 mobile homes. A single point of access is proposed from Broad Road, as in the existing access for both vehicles and pedestrians. The front portion of the site is containing number 282 Broad Road, outlined in blue, and the existing access to the nursery lies within the settlement boundary of Braintree. The larger portion of the site lies beyond the settlement boundary, which is this part here, outside of a defined development boundary and therefore deemed unacceptable in accordance with LPP1 of the adopted local plan. It should also be noted planning permission has previously been sought on this land and refused for 9 dwellings at the site, which is also a material consideration, and that's documented within the report. This slide shows how the site could be laid out with the mobile homes, with its associated internal road layout and hard standing and the single access again from Broad Road. As set out in the officer's report, officers acknowledge no permission is required for the siting of the lodges as long as they comply with the dimensions stated in the Caravan Act. However, the submitted indicative site plan of the permanent mobile homes would result in a form of development out of keeping with its surrounding, which is unlike the prevailing local character. The proposal would change the use of the land to a use incompatible with the countryside and develop a site beyond the settlement boundary in a form discordant with the linear pattern of existing development to the detriment of the countryside and the character of the area. As I said earlier, officers acknowledge that the local planning authority have no control over the mobile homes themselves, providing they meet the definition of a caravan mobile home, but the change of use of land to accommodate 15 mobile homes in this location would be considered harmful to the character and appearance of the site and the wider locality. Officers would also expect at least 25 square metres per amenity space per mobile home. However, the indicative layout illustrates that amenity areas would be directly overlooked due to the limited separation distance and would result in interlocking. There is also several units which would benefit from narrow amenity strips, so for example, to the northeastern corner, and then to the southern boundary. This plot here would obviously be hindered by significant tree coverage. Again, that's similar to this northeastern corner as well. It is clearly evident that whilst the plan is indicative, insufficient amenity space can be provided for future occupiers. In respect of impact on neighbouring residential amenity, as I said, no permission is required for the siting of the mobile homes as long as they comply with the Caravan Act. However, given the size of the site and the number of caravans, this is probably the layout that would come forward. The nearest properties are to the west, including number 282 Ward Road, 284 and 276. It's considered that the use of the land for the stationing of the mobile homes would result in a poor relationship to the neighbouring properties in terms of its proximity to the boundaries, resulting in a sense of enclosure, and could also give rise to overlooking to the detriment of the amenities of existing occupiers. The Council's ecologist has reviewed the proposal, including the submitted ecology appraisal and the bat roost assessment. However, the buildings to be demolished on site would impact on the bats, and insufficient information, i.e. lack of surveys, has been provided to demonstrate that it would not have a detrimental impact on the protected and priority species. No objections has been raised in relation to the biodiversity net gain, which could be conditioned if it was deemed acceptable. The proposed change of use would also result in drainage implications. Whilst it is acknowledged that the applicant has provided a flood risk assessment and a SUD strategy, the local lead flood authority has raised a holding objection due to insufficient information provided to confirm how roads would be treated. Discharge locations have not been provided, nor has the application demonstrated sufficient storage for surface water from the site or a detailed drainage layout. Although the site plan is indicative, the proposal illustrates one parking space per mobile home with no visitor parking. The proposed parking provision is considered unacceptable given each property is likely to have at least 2 people and no visitor parking can be accommodated on the site. The scheme therefore underprovides in car parking, and given the number of potential occupiers and visitors, the proposal could result in the displacement of cars beyond the site and onto the nearby highway network. It should be noted that no objections are raised in terms of the single access to the site, whereby Essex Highways have formally assessed the proposal and they consider that the use of this site in terms of vehicle movements would not be detrimental to highway safety or impact on the highway network. Given the proposal would result in the permanent residents, the view is a financial contribution towards habitat regulations would be required, together with affordable housing, open space, NHS contribution, education and refuse. Obviously, given that the application is recommended for refusal, the contributions have not been secured via Section 106 agreement at this time. This plan highlights the tree constraints. The application was accompanied by a tree survey and various other supporting documents. However, the Council's Landscaping Services has reviewed the proposal and considers insufficient information has been provided to fully assess the impact of the proposals, given that there are potential issues for harmful impacts onto the trees, particularly ones that are of significant interest, for example, to the south of the site. The next drawing is just a can't get my words, a survey. yeah, sorry. This illustrates obviously the location of the hard standing and existing buildings on site to be demolished. And the next few slides are the photos of the site. So this shows the vehicle access to the site looking north and south, the existing footpath, the vehicle access from in the site looking west, the site looking east, southeast, and to the west again. And this is the existing bungalow to the rear of the site. Again, with views to the east, the south, and the existing bungalow itself. To summarise, obviously the application is a full application for a change of use of land for the siting of 15 mobile homes. In terms of its benefits, it would deliver 15 mobile homes of permanent occupation and economic and social benefits during the construction and thereafter. In terms of the adverse impacts, the proposed change of use would, by reason of its location and layout, would fail to reinforce local distinctiveness of the built environment, and by reason of its siting of the mobile homes represents a visual intrusion into the local landscaping, which would be out of keeping with the pattern of existing development. It would fail to achieve a high quality design out of keeping with the prevailing character and appearance of the countryside. Insufficient information has been submitted to demonstrate the proposal would provide an acceptable standard of residential amenity in respect of limited amenity space, privacy and outlook. And the proposal would result in a sense of enclosure and give rise to noise and disturbance to nearby residential properties. The proposal also fails to provide a sufficient level of on-site car parking. Insufficient information has been provided in relation to protected species. And the lead local flood authority has a holding objection based on the submitted drainage information at this time. Landscaping services have also raised a holding objection based on insufficient information provided to fully assess the impacts on the trees. There is no agreed Section 106 agreement to secure all the identified planning contributions, including the impacts on increased demand for services, facilities, including affordable housing, health provision, open space or a refuse strategy. The proposal would also increase recreational pressures on the designated sites, and the lack of a secured financial contribution would impose detrimental impacts on these sites. Therefore, the application is recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report.
Thank you, Janine, for taking us through that. Members, over to you. Councillor Finken.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most inappropriate applications that we've seen since we've been on this committee since the election. It's totally out of keeping with the area, and all the reasons given, I think, have led to the conclusion that it shouldn't be granted. So I would agree with everything that the officers have recommended.
Councillor Shreer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's not very often we can concur to tonight, but I think, as was pointed out by the officers about the Caravan Act and the Caravan Mobile Home, there's no real concerns there from a planning perspective, but I think, as the officer made in the summary and recommendations there, about everything else that hasn't been completed or been complied with, absolutely overrules this application going any further under the conditions as we've heard tonight. So I agree that with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Any other member wish to comment? Councillor Bevis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's just a couple of gaps for me that I just wanted clarified, if I may. I mean, I've grown up knowing this site as a nursery since ever, I think. And I think most of us probably around this room are very familiar with the site. So I don't think there's any problems with us not appreciating what it is, you know, what that site is. And it's always been, as far as I can recall, a site for business. And it's a shame that something similar hasn't come forward. And that's really leading to my question, where it says a change of use. What is the current use on the site then? Because as far as I'm aware, it's still well, I'd like the officer just to clarify that for me?
Yeah, it's just used for commercial premises at the
Thank
moment.
you.
So it's not a nursery. That ceased in about 2015. So it's for,
Exactly, yeah.
like vehicles.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
still classified for business use, isn't it?
Yeah, when I carried out my site visit late last year, yeah, it was still in commercial use, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I wanted to know. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, the first reason given for refusal is because the site falls outside of the adopted local plan. And I think, as most of us are well aware, if that were the only reason, that on its own is not always enough to refuse an application, either by this committee or at appeal. But we have got 5 other reasons, I think quite solid reasons here, that the officer is recommending refusal, and I'd like to thank Janine for a very clear report. You know, I think for me, looking at it, it appears quite cramped. They're trying to get too much onto this site, notwithstanding any of the other reasons. There's too much going on, and it leads to lack of amenity space and overlooking. And then you have the lack of information with regards to SUDs and the lack of any Section 106 agreement. So I think there is more than enough reason in this report to justify the refusal. It's simply not suitable for what is proposed for a number of reasons. Thank you, Chairman.
Nobody else would like to make a comment? Oh, Councillor Basfint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are officers actually including in their reason for refusal the parking situation?
Yes, the parking is on there as one of the reasons, yeah.
Because within almost a stone's throw of this very site, there is exactly that. There is a mobile home park that has 1 space per mobile home. And I'm talking about Coggeshall Road, Braintree side. I'm not talking about any other site. I'm talking about Coggeshall Road site, and we have exactly that. So I just find that interesting that we've allowed it, but now we're not allowing it. Thank you.
Do you want to comment on that, Janine?
Yeah, in terms of that application, obviously every application is treated on its own merits, and in this location we don't agree that 1 parking space is sufficient for potential future occupiers of the site, and no visitor parking.
Okay, thank you. If nobody else wants to comment, would anybody like to move the officer's recommendation to refuse? So I think Councillor Finken got his hand up first, and then I take it Councillor Diamond is going to second. All those in favour of refusing this application? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. That application has been refused. So we'll now move on to the next item to be decided this evening, which is item 5D on your agenda. This is application number 24/02090 full, which is at 16 to 18 Freeborns Road in Witham. We don't have any speakers on this application, so I shall ask Janine to move straight to her presentation.
Thank you. The application site is located within the Freeborns Industrial Estate, which is within Witham, and is allocated as a strategic employment site within policy LPP2 of the adopted local plan. The application seeks full planning permission to erect a new commercial unit with a flexible planning use of Class E, G Part 3 for any industrial purposes, Class B2 general industry, and Class B8 storage and distribution. The flexible use is appropriate to the industrial estate as it is policy compliant with the objectives of the employment uses, and it gives potential occupiers more flexibility and is more attractive to users of the site. This is the existing site plan. So obviously this is, where's my arrow gone? There it is. So this is the existing site on the corner location. And this is Unit 18, which has been recently refurbished. This plan highlights where the green area is. That is where all the buildings have been previously demolished on the site. This is the site plan. So as you can see, the main solar access is from the northeastern corner. You would have parking, and the proposal seeks to retain the existing trees on site together with additional landscaping to the perimeter of the boundary. This would be condition, I think it's condition 6, would be imposed to ensure full landscaping details would be submitted and to ensure an enhancement of the character and appearance of the area together with net gain in tree planting, shrubs and hedging. There are no neighbouring residential properties within the vicinity of the site. However, environmental impacts such as external lighting would be conditioned. So, for example, the external lighting is conditioned via number 7, as set out in the report. No objections have been raised by the Council's Environmental Health Officer in terms of air quality, and no objections have been raised following receipt of revised information in respect of flooding or drainage from Anglian Water or the lead local flood authority. The proposed parking provision is policy compliant, and the spaces shown meet the recommended sizes as set out in the parking standards. And as I said, there would be one sole access to the site to the northeastern corner, which is already in place on site. Essex Highways have raised no objections to the scheme in terms of the additional vehicle movements to the site, trip generation and overall impacts on the highway network. This just shows the ground floor and the roof plan. These are the proposed east and north elevations. Obviously, the elevational design within the Freeborn industrial estate is quite varied. And when I come onto my photos, you will see that the elevational design here has referenced Unit 18 to the west with similar cladding. It's quite a simplistic structural design of the building. It uses cladding to break up the overall form, a grey palette, and features horizontal cladding to the entrance, reveals to the roller shutter doors, windows, and a brickwork plinth. The appearance of the building would be typical of the industrial estates in this location, as I said, most notably to the building to the west, but also to the immediate north there are cladded buildings. And there are a variety of scales and bulks and footprints within the industrial estate, including tall eaves and shallow pitch roofs, in which this development would respect that existing character. The overall massing is broken up with the use of the different cladding to both light, to provide both light and interest to the elevations. And the overall scale and massing is considered acceptable through the elevational detailing articulation. The building has been designed to ensure it can achieve a very good BREEAM standard in accordance with policy LPP 72 of the adopted local plan. And it's also noted, as set out in the main report, obviously the permitted development rights within Part 14 of the General Permitted Development Order would enable the end user of the site to expand renewable energy sources to meet energy needs in the form of solar panels if required at a later stage. This is the proposed west and south elevations, again just to illustrate the cladding that would be proposed. This is some detailing. The fencing detailings has already been granted permission and already installed. Obviously, these are the access gates, cycle details and refuse storage. Just to illustrate what was actually on site previously, this was the building that was demolished. This is what's on site now. So as you can see, the cladding that I showed on the elevations, it's a very similar design and scale in terms of the shallow pitch roof design. The site looking west, these are the existing trees. Obviously, the site is not located in a conservation area, and the trees aren't worthy of protection. However, the applicant is seeking to retain them and obviously provide additional planting in the form of trees, shrubs and hedges. This is the site to the south, east and the west. To summarise, the principle of development is acceptable. It would be compliant with an employment policy area designation and would provide social and economic benefits through the construction and management activities relating to the development and employment opportunities. The scale of the building is effectively managed through the elevational design, as in keeping with the local context. The building would meet BREEAM Very Good standards as required by local plan policy. Access and parking matters are acceptable, including sufficient cycle storage and EV parking. Whilst there could be potential impacts in terms of additional noise, lighting and disturbance, these impacts are not considered to outweigh identified policy support and public benefits. And as I said earlier in my speech, lighting has been restricted by condition. Landscaping plans seek to retain the trees and provide additional landscaping, which is acceptable. And other Section 106 matters include an open space contribution together with a travel monitoring fee. Just to clarify, there has been an update to Condition 6. This is due to following the publication of the report. It was noted that the lead local flood authority has not raised any objections in terms of the hard standing surfaces, what you would need to use for industrial purposes. So therefore, taking into that account, I've just changed the wording slightly. So all areas of hard standing should be submitted to and approved in writing, because obviously, as you're probably aware from the photos, there's a large expanse of existing hard standing. So whilst there'll be some areas that could be permeable to withstand the industrial HGV vehicles, they may need a different type of material, and that's why we've changed the wording of the condition in this instance. Taking the details and recommended conditions into account, together with that update, officers consider that there are no material considerations that indicate a decision should be made other than in accordance with the development plan. So planning permission is recommended subject to the conditions and the Section 106 obligations set out in the main report.
Thank you, Janine, for that comprehensive report. Over to you, members. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is obviously a welcome development in terms of employment and reuse of previously developed land. I mean, we so often face these dilemmas about loss of greenfield sites, but obviously not in this case. I thought the section in the report on ecology was quite interesting. This is not an SSSI. I think we can comfortably say that. But on the other hand, it is actually a very prominent site, right on the corner where a lot of people go to the recycling centre or to other uses in the area. So I was quite pleased to see the landscaping out front. Perhaps there could be some more, but I mean, if those trees are properly looked after, they will make a contribution. And it's also good that the existing trees on the site are going to be kept. No, they're not magnificent, tall oak trees, but actually a lot of the trees on the industrial estate have survived in spite of what we do as humans, being whacked by strimmers and mowers, lorries reversing into them. They're actually quite old, a lot of the trees on the industrial estate. They've been there for decades, and those have probably been there for quite a long time. So, yes, they're not the most magnificent specimens, but it's good they're being kept, and if they can be augmented with further planting, that's great. I agree with Wiston Town Council about the lack of solar panels up front. It would have been good to see them, and I'm not a member of it now, but the Climate Change Commission, which I know Councillor Schwarz involved with, talks about rolling out massive numbers of solar panels in Essex, but we're not seeing it in this district. We're not seeing it on housing developments, and we're not seeing it on commercial developments, and this one clearly would be a fantastic opportunity. There's no nearby constraints in terms of tall buildings. We have open access to the sun as it goes round during the day, and yet we don't have solar panels up front. So I think that's an opportunity missed. In terms of the lighting condition, yes, and I've read it, and it's word for word what you'd want. The only comment I would make is my observation: a lot of the buildings which have either been refurbished or are new on the industrial estate in recent years, if they've got lighting conditions on, and the lights that are going up are not well controlled at all. A lot of the floodlights on the buildings are up at high angles, white LEDs shining out. And in this case, although yes, it's in an industrial area, those lights will be looking out across the A12 towards the open countryside. So if they can be angled downwards to where the light's needed, that would be another positive. But other than that, Madam Chairman, I think, yeah, this is a positive proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ginny, do you want to come back on any of those points, or?
Yeah, in terms of the lighting, obviously, yeah, we can put additional wording into the condition to reflect your suggestion. And yeah, with respect to landscaping, we're hoping, yeah, the landscaping scheme that comes forward can retain the trees because, as you said, although they're not worthy of preservation, they do enhance the character, and with additional planting, it will look aesthetically pleasing.
Do you want to comment at all on the point about the solar panels?
Well, as I said, it's set out in my report and earlier in my speech, we haven't restricted permitted development rights. So I know, obviously, until they've actually built the building, although they're hopefully going to achieve the very good BREEAM standard, they may need to employ renewable energy. So then, obviously, having the benefit of permitted development rights for Part 14 of the General Permitted Development Order would enable them to put solar panels on there. I guess we could possibly, well...
We can't really require it.
No, we can't really require it because it's not really a policy requirement, and they do benefit from permitted development rights. So I think that's probably the best avenue at this time. And as you said, it wouldn't impact in terms of any material harm to the adjacent properties.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. I think Councillor Ritchie, did you want to be next?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No, I think this is a great use of a piece of land which, as you can see from the old pictures, once housed a fairly kind of old, typical 80s type industrial building, and now brings it back into good use, which mirrors a neighbouring industrial site quite well. I think the fact that, and again, Councillor Abbott mentioned it, the fact that the developers can use the existing land and the greenery around it to work in hand with the new build is favourable on this occasion, and I think the additional economic benefits that it will bring to Whittam are to be welcomed as well. Also, as mentioned, we can't mandate that the build uses or makes use of anything solar at this time, but if they are building out to a BREEAM very good status, let's hope that as their needs change or as the business changes over the next few years, it may mean that they then want to install or make use of solar energy as part of their expansion plans or as the business develops over the next few years. They've been good in accepting and including things like EV charging and parking, sufficient cycle storage, so those who want to commute to and from the premises locally can do so, and those that have got electric vehicles can make use of electric vehicle charging as well. I think all in all this is a more than acceptable development in this type of area, and we'd be more than I'd be more than happy to approve officers' recommendations this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Schwer?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to basically echo what Councillor Ricky has shared, and also what Councillor Abbott. And I think it's a little bit concerning about the external lighting there, and if the light spill could be contained within sight, that would be a huge advantage rather than any spillage into the night sky. And as has previously been said, you know, the reuse and employment are great. The fact that actually the continuity with the building next door also, I think, is very important for the industrial estate. And of course, it's going to have its economic benefit as well while being built. The conditions of the trees, there's actually the quality of this coming forward, I think, is really good. And I'm sure that probably all of us around here are pleased to see an increasing quality of not only design and build, but also the assets that go with it. By that, I mean automatically we are looking at EV charging, recycled storage, you know, better environmental standards for lighting, and those conditions of biodiversity net gain within it, keeping the trees. So overall, I just feel that this is a jump up in the standard of economic benefit and employment within Braintree District, and I'm pleased to see the leap up in quality, because this is exactly what we want, because this will help bring in those higher skills into the area, giving lifelong viability, I think, to the economy of Braintree district. And I think that's important, and this is planning, and it's that pride of place, even on an industrial unit, which I feel is important. So all overall, the only thing is I would recommend, and I don't know if we can, but I would suggest that we have an informative on the solar panels, because I think that's really important going forward. Because everything else is really good, but if we could encourage that built development to have those EVs, I think it's an important point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schwert. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was just going to underline the point made by Councillor Schwert on the solar panels. I just feel that, you know, we talk about pride of place, but this is the pride of place for Whittam, and we've asked Whittam Town Council to be a consultee, and they've come back and used the word strongly. They strongly advise. And I think it's quite important that we do make the developer aware of that, and I think an informative would be the right way to do that, so I would support that too. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Any other member wish to make a comment? In which case, would anybody like to move officer's recommendation to grant? Thank you, Councillor Robert.
Move with that additional informative.
With the additional formative and the amendment to the conditional about lighting. Yes. Seconder, Councillor Ritchie. All those in favour of granting this application with those amendments? Thank you, members. That again is unanimous this evening. Thank you. That application has been granted. So we'll now move on to our next application this evening, which is item 5E on your agenda, application number 24/02384. This is a reserve matters application in relation to land north of London Road, Kelvedon. We do have a speaker on this application. We're going to do these two applications separately, so if I could call the speaker as Mr. Milne to the chair and microphone on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Oliver Milne from Savills, and I'm the planning agent for the application. The applicant, Barrett David Wilson, bought the site in April 2024 with the intention of delivering the outline planning permission. Since June 2024, the applicant is positively engaged with the council at the pre-application stage through a planning performance agreement. To date, this has involved a series of meetings with planning and design officers at the council, county council's officers relating to drainage and highways, as well as presenting at 2 planning members' forums. The applicant has also held public exhibition for the local community, has met with both Kelvedon and Fearing parish councils, and has met with the local MP. In addition to this, the applicant has received input from the NHS on the health centre and input from potential operators for the care home, nursery and retail space. All of this engagement has helped shape the emerging master plan for the wider site, and the applicant intends to submit their main reserve matters application covering the new health centre and the new homes later this year. The slight and unusual nature of the outline planning permission is that all matters are reserved for future consideration. This includes access. Essex County Council, in their capacity as the Highway Authority, need access approved from a planning perspective before they can enter into any technical discussions and legal agreements relating to the delivery of the highways works. Once discussions are able to start, this process can be fairly protracted. The approval of the application before you this evening will allow the applicant to start discussions with Essex later this month, so that approval can be obtained as soon as possible in parallel with the main planning application. The application is ultimately intended to facilitate the delivery of the new health centre and new homes as early as possible, providing a permanent safe access for construction and enabling works from the outset. Through the positive pre-application engagement to date, the design team has been able to fix the layout of this small part of the wider site, enabling this early application. The submitting information demonstrates that the application will not fetter the remainder of the wider sites and will tie in with the emerging master plan. Within the application boundary, the design includes street trees, other trees and retained hedgerows where possible. These will all contribute to the applicant's commitment to achieve a biodiversity net gain of 10%. This goes above and beyond the requirement of the outline planning permission. Beyond this application, the applicant will continue to engage with all parties in the context of the emerging master plan for the wider site, For example, we're looking to organise regular meetings with Kelvedon Parish Council, and we are due to present again to the Planning Members Forum next month. I would like to finish by thanking the case officer for their well-written report, and we hope that you'll be able to support your officer's recommendation this evening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr Milne. So we'll now move on to the officer's presentation on this application, which is going to be given by Neil.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for approval of the reserved matters. So as you heard at question time, in this particular example, the reserved matters are access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, because none of those matters were approved as part of the outline planning permission. So it was a 2017 application which was granted on appeal at the start of 2023. This application is for 0.3 hectares of land, which will provide landscaping around the first entrance, or sorry, one of the vehicular entrances into the site from London Road. So on the left-hand drawing here, this is the site which has the benefit of outline planning permission. So you can see there's two frontages with the London Road. London Road runs along the bottom here, coming into the village. This is the A12 slip, or the slip road coming off the A12, coming down to London Road. And we've got the south access just down here, and the application we'll be discussing after this is the northern access up here. So as you can see, we've got a broadly rectangular shaped site. We've got the London Road running across the front. Got the Great Eastern main railway line running across the back of the site. And there's a ribbon of development, existing houses, which front onto the London Road here, which the application site wraps behind. So the application that we're considering here is reserved matters for this area here. So this is the smaller red line. So you can see the blue line is now denoting the overall application site, the land owned by the applicant, but we're just concerned with the area in red here. So this is the general arrangement drawing showing the south access. So you can see we've got approximately 110 metres of highway coming in from a new priority junction on the London Road. You can see the road comes in. There's a spur coming off here, which could provide access to a further development parcel in the future. Whilst the application drawings show this sort of ghosted out layout around, that's for information only. That's showing how the applicant envisages other parts of the site being developed, but all we're looking at is the area within the red line. So we're concerned with the road, the footways which run to either side. We've got the grass verge, the tree lined street again running through. You can see, as with the broad road or similar arrangement, you've got that avenue planting, so you've got the rhythm of trees as you come into the site. Just coming off here, we've got a visitor bay to the side here within the verge. That's to provide parking for an electricity substation, which is proposed just to the rear. So this is the neighbouring property at Loughton. So the substation is just at the foot of their garden. The bungalow is down the front here. And then the other aspects of the application, you can see down this side here, we've got a surface water drainage attenuation basin, which would provide the surface water drainage for this stretch of highway, but was also envisaged to form part of the surface water drainage system for the rest of the site as well. So that's just showing sort of a larger context. The general arrangement again the same. And then this is the illustrative master plan. So we're looking at the southern axis here, so it's just this element here. So this is only for information, but the applicants included this. This is how they envisage the site coming forward, and you've heard there'll be subsequent applications for approval of reserved matters which are intended to be submitted later this year. So the application will require the removal of hedgerow across the front of the site. So it's approximately 39 metres of hedge which is to be removed. As you can see here, denoted with the red shading. So these are some photos. So this is sort of looking sort of north. So this is the property at the end of that ribbon of development, Loughton, just here. And then this is sort of coming further up the road and then looking back across. So this is looking back sort of south towards, down towards the A12. So this is the hedge across the front here. And then this is just coming back inside the site, looking back out, so you can just see a different perspective of the hedge which will need to be removed. You'll have seen within the committee report there's a further hedge within the site which runs along the western boundary of the application site. So this is a photograph showing that. You can just about make out there is a ditch which runs, an existing ditch which runs just on the far side as you look here of the hedge. So you've got the hedge, ditch, and then the application site, the rest of the application site in here. So this hedge is to be retained. The parish council did have some concerns about the extent to which the hedge could be retained. The consultant arboriculturalist who's acting for the developer has said there will be some pruning works required to facilitate the construction of part of the basin, but they consider that the distance from the hedge and the fact that there is that ditch intervening, and this has been a sort of ploughed field as well, would all, in their view, mean that the hedge should not be adversely affected as a result of the construction. The ditch is to remain. The SUDS feature will be constructed on the other side of that. This is looking just from just along that ditch there. So this is looking back across the site. So this is the existing property, Loughton here, with their rear garden here, and then the substation will be going just up the back, just beyond the end of their fence line. This is the attenuation basin, or a drawing showing the attenuation basin. One of the concerns raised by Kelvedon and Parish Council, as you'll have seen, is they don't consider this to be the high level of surface water drainage design that they would expect to see on a new development, and that they refer to within the design guidelines which are provided within the Kelvedon neighbourhood plan. They would have preferred to have seen a basin which held water, a more substantial volume of water throughout the year to provide an aquatic environment and sort of the, I guess, the benefits in terms of biodiversity that would come from that. The applicant has been made aware of the Parish Council's comments. The engineers have said that it's not possible to re-engineer the basin within the space that is available, and to provide to provide sufficient capacity for the drainage system to work overall within the space that's available. So they're content that the design is appropriate for the setting. This is one of the gateway features. This will be one of the main entrances to their development. They're satisfied that it can be appropriately landscaped and that it would be a positive aspect of their development. In terms of the landscape proposals, we've also got the trees running along the road. Similar issue as with the Broad Road application earlier in terms of trees which have been specified but which the Highway Authority have recommended are not approved at this stage to allow consideration as part of the Highway Works Agreement, so the road can be considered for adoption. And then there's shrub planting along the boundary with Loughton just running up here towards the substation at the back here. Again, the Parish Council raised some concern about the suitability of some of the planting here. Again, the developer is satisfied that the planting is appropriate. We do take the point that the Parish Council made about the setting out of the planting, that there's quite a variety of mixes of plants, shrubs and grasses, which is intentional. It's to provide sort of visual interest and cover year round, but we do accept that the drawings that have been submitted here don't provide the level of detail as to how the planting would be set out. So, but that can be covered by condition, so we can address that concern. The substation building is part of the proposal, so you can see here. It's a fairly utilitarian building in terms of appearance. It's likely it would need to have a means of enclosure around it, although we're not sure what the details would be of that. But again, that can be covered by condition. I should just go back before I forget. There was, when we wrote the committee report, we hadn't received the parish council response from Fearing, but we had received that, and we did say in the report, if we received it, we would update members. So there was essentially three key points that the Fearing Parish Council raised. One was around the road type. So it's described as a Type D road in the Essex Design Guide. Fearing Parish Council point out that a Type D road should have 6 metre carriageway, which is what we've got here. But either side, it should have a 2 metre footway on one side and a 3.5 metre foot cycleway on the other side. What's proposed for this application is 2 metre footways on either side. So the Parish Council say that that's not correct. They think the foot cycleway should go in at 3.5 metres. We don't consider, and the Highway Authority don't consider that to be necessary. A Type D road can serve up to 700 dwellings. That's considerably bigger than is proposed here. The roads on the estate are intended to be designed to be a 20-mile-an-hour limit, which should provide a safe environment for cyclists, competent cyclists, to be cycling within the carriageway. So we don't consider the 3.5 metre foot cycleway to be necessary. The Parish Council, Fearing Parish Council, also noted that there was a concern raised in the road safety audit, which the applicant's covering letter, I think, didn't refer to. That refers to the location of a bus stop and the level of visibility at the new junction. That isn't a fundamental issue. The Highway Authority are satisfied that the bus stop location can be designed in an appropriate location as part of the Highway Works Agreement, so they don't see an issue with that that fundamentally affects the access and its safety. And the third point the Parish Council raised was just around lights and electricity poles and asking that they be constructed outside the footway, which is what we would usually expect. So those were just comments that we hadn't received when we wrote the report. So in terms of a summary, it's part of a larger site which has outline planning permission. The original outline application referred in the description of development to 2 accesses being formed from London Road. So I think there was a clear expectation that there would be one at the northern end and this one at the southern end at some point. Obviously, we now have the detail with this reserved matters for where the developer would like to see the southern access go. As I've explained, there are some concerns from the Parish Council, Kelvedon Parish Council, about the SUDS and landscape design, but as officers we are comfortable with what's been presented. As we explained with the Broad Road application, we don't want to be approving details which then cause issues with highway adoption. So whether that be tree species or tree pit design or other technical details, but we do want to be able to control those, so we recommend those matters are covered by condition. There was a couple of points within the report where I managed to miss a word which did change the meaning. So at paragraph 11.2.6 and 11.4.3, I've managed to miss the word not, which completely changes the meaning of both those sentences, which was embarrassing for me, so my apologies for that. One was around the arboriculturalist saying that there weren't any further measures which were required, so that they were explaining to us that they didn't consider any further measures were required to protect the retained hedge. So I managed to miss out not there. And the other one, which was 11.4.3, which I can just find that, was about the infiltration basin. So there was a comment from the Highway Authority which said that if the SUDS basin that we're looking at next to the road was an infiltration feature, then it would need to be at least 6 metres from the road. This isn't an infiltration feature because of the geology of the ground. The water can't drain into the ground, and that's what the Highway Authority's concern was. That if you had an infiltration feature close to the road, it could potentially affect the road construction or subsurface in the future. But the intention with the basin here is that it would be lined It will hold water and then it will drain a controlled rate through the head wall, so it won't be going into the ground and won't have any impact. So that issue wasn't a concern. Although we have received the response from Fearing Parish Council, which we didn't have when we wrote the report, we still don't have a response, unfortunately, from the lead local flood authority. They were consulted back in the middle of November. Despite chasing, we've still received no response. As officers, we still would recommend that the planning committee pass a resolution to approve the application, but we do ask that that resolution is subject to us receiving confirmation from the LLFA that they have no objection to the application, and that if they recommend any conditions, that we're able to add those conditions with regards to surface water drainage. So it's a slightly amended recommendation, so rather than just approval subject to conditions, we are asking for approval, we are asking for a resolution to approve subject to the LFA confirming no objection in respect of surface water drainage. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Neil, for taking us through that. It's very helpful. Members. Anybody got any comments on this application? Councillor Spray, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, and I do think this is fairly straightforward because we largely have, we have outline approval for the site. So this is a matter of detail. I would just say I think it's very disappointing not to have had a response from the Flood Authority. If they were consulted mid-November, that's more than enough time. And I mean, it's something actually I have raised at the Essex Planning Portfolio Holders meetings, the last two meetings. The last one I actually chaired on behalf of County Councillor Lee Scott, and raised the lack of response from some statutory consultees. And I know it's not just this authority that has that problem, and it is very disappointing that they haven't managed to come back in time, but there we are. Other than that, I don't think I have any particular problem with this. Again, the landscaping, leaving the detail of that until after highways have come back, that again makes sense. I think, subject to any comments from Councillor Abbott on the lighting, I think that's fine for me. I think the condition is fairly clear on that. So I don't really think, Chairman, I have anything else to say. I'm going to assume, I think as Neil mentioned in his report, that the substation is, I was going to say sort of concealed, obviously can't be concealed, but will be sufficiently covered in some way to make it blend in and to be as less obvious as possible for the property that is nearest. Other than that, I don't think I have any further comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Yes, there are plenty of climbing plants to choose from, aren't there? Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought what was interesting on this one is there's no arrangement for the junction to slow traffic down. Anyone who knows Kelvedon knows the speed of which traffic comes in off the A12. And if you compare other sites, the one we've just looked at in Braintree, several in Silver and in Cressing, some of them smaller than this, some of them between 200 and 300, there's either a roundabout or some form of arrangement designed to try and stop traffic speed, slow traffic speeds down on approach. So unless officers can tell me that anything else is planned, that's a major concern for me. I mean, that may change if and when the A12 proposal goes through, because the new arrangement for access to Kelvedon will be completely different to the current one. But that seems to be on hold at the minute and with the government as to what they're going to do about that. But I think that is a significant concern. And indeed the overall, I mean, it's water under the bridge now, but the overall massive change this is going to make to that very rural aspect of Keldon as you come in. Concerned again about the loss of hedge along the fronts. Cumulatively, it's very significant, particularly in the south of the district, how many hedges we've lost. I thought the planting on this was better, and there are, I don't think Neil mentioned the species, but some of them are native and mixed as well, which I think is good. But again, we have counties saying, well, we don't want you to approve those, we want you to leave that to a later date. And that suggests to me, my point I made with the other one, that this is going to become generic. They're going to do this every time, which is a concern, because I think as a committee, we should be able to say, we like this or we don't like it in terms of species. But other than that, it's part of a wider consent. But if Neil could just say whether anything else is proposed in terms of that junction, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Councillor Abbott. There isn't anything else proposed. As members might recall from the Members' Forum previously, there's some additional work which is going on at the moment. So the developer is looking at providing an additional pedestrian crossing a bit further up London Road. Part of the work that they need to do to try and persuade the Highway Authority to allow them to put the crossing in is to look at speeds. From the outline permission, there wasn't any objection from the Highway Authority. There wasn't any issue that the inspector saw in having to introduce sort of speed restrictions or anything like that. So I know there's certainly local concerns, Councillor Abbott, that I'm aware of from my dealings with the site, but there isn't anything else proposed at the moment. I guess the developer will be coming back to the Members' Forum, so they'll be able to update all members on the work about the vehicle crossing, and they might be able to provide a further update around sort of vehicle speeds and what they've found with the most recent surveys. Just if I may as well, just on the point about the planting, we have asked Essex officers about tree planting, because it is a common issue for us as well. We'd prefer a bit of clarity. There's quite a small list of trees at the moment which Essex have told us are definitely approved, which could be used within a highway, but there seems to be a further, I don't know if there isn't even a list, but there do seem to be other trees beyond the list which can be considered as suitable for adoption. So what we have asked is if we could have an updated list which explains what Essex will consider for adoption, then we would be in a stronger position in that if a developer came forward and said, we've picked such and such from the list, we know that's okay. So we would be able to tell members at the planning committee, this is what the developer wants to do, it's on the approved list, it should be okay. The problem is at the moment, because the list is so small, it's quite difficult to actually pick from that list, particularly when you're looking at a large site where you're looking at, from an urban design point of view, we're trying to look for different trees on different roads. So the trees on this stretch of road, because it's got that avenue plant and it's a slightly wider road, we're looking for slightly larger trees. Some of the other streets will be smaller trees, and I think at the moment we haven't got the confidence in the list of approved trees to do that, but we are trying to get that from Essex colleagues, and if we can get that, then we'll be able to share that with members and with developers, and we'd have a bit more certainty, but we're not there at the moment. But if that helps a little bit just in terms of the issue and hopefully a sort of a way forward in the future.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah,
Councillor?
that's very helpful. I think the whole committee, speaking obviously for myself as someone very interested in trees, but I'm sure the whole committee would like to see the list when it's agreed. Can you say how small the list is currently? How many number of species?
I wouldn't like to say. It is pretty short. Might be a little bit more than 3, but I don't know. But I can pass on the committee's comments to the highways officers that we're dealing with, although they're not writing the guide. But we can sort of try and give it another push on that. But certainly, as soon as we get anything shared with us in the future, we'll be happy to share that with members through committee or a briefing note or something.
No, I think that would be very helpful, Neil. I think I'm sure I speak for all committee. I think the species of trees is very important, and in the whole design of the and I think the developer agree as well. Anybody else like to make any further comment on this application? Don't have to. I assume not. So would anybody like to move officer's recommendation to approve this? Councillor Bowes-Flint and the seconder, Councillor Diamond. You caught my eye first, thank you. So all those, it's moved and seconded. That subject to the lead local authority not having the objection and incorporating any conditions. Okay, that has been granted then. Thank you, members. So we'll now come on to the final application this evening, which is also on the same site, a different item 5F on the agenda, different application number. This is a full application, and the application number is 24/02385, full land north of London Road again in Kelvedon. And we do have another presentation from Mr. Milne. Rather, presentation, speech. I mean.
Thank you, Chair. Much of my statement from the previous application equally applies to this application, so I'll try not to repeat myself. But the approval of the application before you this evening will allow the applicant, Barrett David Wilson, to start highways discussions with Essex County Council later this month, so that approval can be attained as soon as possible. The application is ultimately intended to facilitate the delivery of the new health centre and new homes as early as possible. The location of the proposed access is the product of significant design work on the community hub element of the outline planning permission. This element includes the health centre, the care home, the nursery and the retail space. Through this work, it's become clear that the community hub area of the outline permission is too narrow, is too hidden away behind the existing properties of London Road, and does not reflect the actual needs of future operators. The revised community hub area as part of the emerging master plan has resulted in the northern axis being pushed slightly further north compared to what was originally envisaged. Whilst it is acknowledged that the proposed access falls within the current landscape buffer of the outline permission, the purpose of the landscape buffer is to protect the setting of the listed buildings to the north-east of the site. It is therefore positive to note that the Council's historic buildings consultant has no objections to the location of the access. Equally, it's positive to note that the Highway Authority is supportive of the location of the access in principle. The proposed change to the community hub area and the landscape buffer of the outline permission does not form part of this application and is dealt with under a separate application. As noted by your officers within their report, the determination of the application before you this evening does not fetter your options when you come to determine this application at a later date. The purpose of the application before you this evening, as I mentioned, is to facilitate the delivery of the new health centre and new homes as early as possible by allowing Barrett David Wilson to agree the highways works with County Council in parallel with the main planning application to provide a permanent safe access from the outset. Again, I'd like to finish by thanking the case officer for their well-written report. We hope that you're able to support your officer's recommendation this evening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Milne. So I'll now ask Neil to give us his presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a different type of application. So this is a full application for construction of vehicular access at London Road. So this is the northern access, which I was referring to earlier. So I won't show the whole site again, but this is the area in question here. The small red box. I'm not sure you'll see many applications with a smaller red line than that. But this is what's proposed. So this is the ribbon of development that we were talking about. So Loughton was at the other end of this row of development. So we're coming up here. So we're coming in towards the village. This is where the northern axis is going. The reason that this is a full application rather than a reserved matters is, as you heard, this will actually, the location of this will be within what was envisaged to be the landscape buffer by the outline permission. So we can't consider a reserved matters application which isn't consistent with the outline permission. So although the applicant has applied to vary that condition through a variation application, which will come back to committee at a point in the future for determination, they wanted to try and get a planning permission for both the accesses so they could start those discussions with the Highway Authority. So this is the reason that's led for this application being submitted as a full application, because it couldn't be a reserved matters. So this is all that's proposed. So whereas the reserve matters at the southern end of the site were showing that first length of road coming in, because the developer is very conscious that the committee will need to consider the wider question of a landscape buffer in the future. All they're looking to do with this application is agree the point of access and the first few metres literally of the access coming in, and then nothing further. Now again, the general arrangement drawing here, this is zoomed in, but this shows how the applicant thinks the area around the access could be developed, but this would need to be approved through reserve matters in the future. And again, that's only shown for information, that isn't for approval or consideration tonight. All we're considering is the access point. So this is just zoomed in, so you can see what the application is showing is the new priority junction onto the London Road. As with the southern access, there's no traffic calming or no other measures within the carriageway. It's just that priority junction onto the London Road. You can see the footway coming up to either side, tactile crossing points, but then you've got the footways coming into the site, and you can see the start of the grass verges on either side of the carriageway. So it's consistent with what we would expect to see with what we would term the spine road coming into the site. So this is just again the wider context. This is again the illustrative master plan shown for information. So this shows where the access is proposed here. And you can see there's still a landscape buffer shown across the front here. So we're only really considering, I guess, the first few metres as you come into the site. So we can consider the extent to which there's landscape across here, but we can't be considering the landscape buffer further back into the site because we're not considering what happens with this road coming back in. We're just considering what's happening at the front of the site. But that just shows potentially the context. Again, there's unfortunately hedge removal required across the front of the site, so that's shown on the drawing here, and again is referred to within the committee report. This is a couple of photos of the hedge, so this is just sort of looking almost directly opposite, but this is just sort of showing the wider context. So this is sort of from towards the southern end of the site, looking up towards the village. And then this is just a little bit further back to the south. So this is the bungalow, which is on the end of that ribbon of development. This is looking back across the site. So this is the hedge along the frontage. And this, you can just make out across the back here, this is the driveway which leads up to Churchill Farm, which is the listed building, which was the reason that the landscape buffer was shown in the first place. And if I just go back, sorry, it might be useful, should have pointed it out. So this was the bungalow that I was just showing there, Sunnymead. So this was looking back across. So what you could just see was the trees along the edge of that boundary, or sorry, within that that adjoining land, I should say, apologies. This is the access driveway leading into Churchill Farm, and there's several listed buildings within that complex there. That is a residential property now. But there's several grade 2 listed buildings within that complex. And then this was just coming into the site, so this is just looking across, so you can see Sunnymead, the bungalow there, and the access will be coming in here into the field. This is just a photo from the London Road showing the driveway up to Churchill Farm, so it sort of runs round, and you can just sort of make out in the distance there some of the buildings within that farm group complex. And then this is sort of looking from the approximate location of the access coming in, looking across, and that's the driveway and the vegetation within the adjoining land there. So this is a couple of drawings. So this is just trying to show the landscape buffer. So this was where when the outline application was considered, officers had agreed a set of parameter plans with the then applicant and a design code. So we thought that gave a basis on which the site could be developed going forward. And on that basis, we were looking at a road which was within that dotted line there. So we were looking at sort of 70, over 70 metres in terms of a buffer just at that point there. I mean, it varied as you went up through the site, but just to give you an idea of what was envisaged originally at the outline permission by officers. Now, what happened at the inquiry was that local residents and sort of ward members didn't like the master plan that officers had negotiated with the applicant at the time. So that had the local centre down here, and it just had residential development up here. Local residents wanted the community hub to go to the other side, to the northern end. So that's that has been, to be honest, the key driver, which has led the developer to look at an alternative option in terms of the access, because they're trying to find a way to accommodate that community hub within the end of the site. Now, members will have to consider the wider issue of the buffer and obviously the reserved matters for the layout of the community hub and other uses in the future. With regards to the access, it is fair to say that the road position as you come in, so we'll just be approving this bit here, is clearly closer to this northeastern boundary than was envisaged by the outline stage and as the inspector considered. So the inspector didn't approve the design code, didn't approve any parameter plans, but the inspector's condition did say that the landscape buffer needed to be at least consistent or at least match what was shown on the design code, which wasn't approved. So it was a bit of a strange condition from the inspector, but that's what we've got, so that's what we need to work with. So you can see here the road is approximately 29 metres closer, so that's the extent to which the buffer has been narrowed. So you can see there's still 40 metres sort of to this point here, and then you've got probably about another 100 more metres up here to the entrance to Churchill Farm. So the road certainly is closer to the entrance to Churchill Farm. Here, the access point is factually closer, but there would still be, across the frontage, never mind what happens with the road as it comes back in, there would still be a frontage to the London Road here and the potential to provide that landscape buffer across the front here. I say what happens with the road as it comes into the site after the access point, that will be a matter for determination through other applications. All we're looking to do is just approve the location at the front of the site. The parish council and some residents think that the district council should not be approving the access until the variation application has been considered. As officers, we are comfortable that we can make a recommendation to approve, and we think members could approve the application for the access in this position, and that it wouldn't prevent them from making a full consideration of the landscape buffer and the variation application in the future, because the landscape buffer, the majority of it, is going to be determined by where the road goes once it actually enters into the site. So it will need to enter here, but it could go this way, it could go that way, it could go as it's shown on here. So we don't think by fixing just the access and the first couple of metres of carriageway, that would prevent members from making their own decision about the rest of the landscape buffer when the variation application is considered in the future. I'll do the same again as I did with Fearing Parish Council. The points were the same though, so they've made the same point in their objection, which we didn't report in the committee report, about the Type D road and the foot cycleway. They've made a comment about the visibility that would be afforded to people using the access, depending on where the bus stop goes, and they've said consideration should be given to a bus lay-by to prevent visibility being obstructed. Again, the Highway Authority are happy that we could approve the position of the location and the bus stop location, and the bus stop arrangements could be determined as part of the highway works. And the Fearing Parish Council made a similar comment about the electricity and lighting poles within the footway. So no additional points beyond that. So the summary is much the same as the previous application, so I won't repeat all of it. The difference here is perhaps the issue of the landscape buffer. That's the reason that this can't be considered as a reserved matter. It's a full application, but as we've tried to explain in the report, in the presentation, the applicant has designed the scheme so that they are really, or they are only getting approval or seeking approval for the position of the access. What happens with the road and the buffer, that will be considered at a later date. Although we don't have street trees being proposed, we do have similar comments from the Highway Authority with regards to the detailed design. So we're not approving all of the drawings that have been submitted. There's various technical drawings submitted with the application. So we're not recommending approval of those. Those would be agreed through the Highway Works agreement. But that is the presentation for that application. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Neil, for taking us through that, explaining that. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, could I start with a question, please? Neil, could you put the slide back up which showed a building in sort of a shaded form next to the proposed new access? Yes. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So, question is, have they already? That's the care home, is that?
That's what that is showing, yes.
So, have they already moved that in terms of that drawing compared to the original?
So that isn't part of the approval. That's shown for information. But yes, the care home, when it is wherever it goes, will need to go in what's termed as the community hub. So those are the community uses which were approved as part of the outline permission. So that's the care home, the retail units, the early years and childcare facility, and the health centre. So all of those uses need to go in what's termed the community hub. So those would need to all go at the northern end of the site by virtue of the appeal decision from the planning inspector.
But I think we can see their intention, can't we? Although that's not part of the application, they're giving the game away. See, to me, this is a Trojan horse. This is just establishing a principle. Well, we want the access here, and we're not going to show you where the road's going to go into the site like they have at the other end, because they're going to come back and change things. So I can't support this. I fully agree with the parish council. We shouldn't be looking at this in isolation, because this is a game that's being played here. Let's establish where we're going to come in, and we'll do all the detail later. And with respect, the chap from the developers, he said historic buildings haven't objected. Well, they're probably not going to object to that little thing, but if they knew where all the rest was going, and the landscape buffer was, so you said it could go anywhere, that road, they might well have an objection. But of course what this does is defines what happens to a lot of that area. So I think this is a Trojan horse. I don't think this is it's a legitimate application, but it's not an appropriate application in terms of how, this really important juxtaposition of where this road comes in, the landscape buffer, the community uses and all of that. And fundamentally the inspector, I've made a note here, the inspector stipulated that buffer had to be there and of that width, and what we're effectively saying is, well, no, Mr. Inspector, we don't necessarily agree with you, particularly at this end, and I don't think we should be doing that. I mean, it was controversial enough, this application. So I think we should not approve this, and I think we should be looking at, if they want to change it, it should come back as a whole thing, where this road's coming in, where the building's going to be, so we can look at it as a whole. That's my position. I can't support it. Thank you.
Councillor Abbott. Other members wish to have their view on this. Councillor Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I don't think I can agree with Councillor Abbott on this. My understanding is we're being asked to approve just the access. What happens after that in terms of where the road goes and what happens with the buffer and planting is then up for further discussion and at least one other application. Can I just check, have I understood that right, Neil?
That's right. So the application is only seeking approval for the coloured element within the red box at the front. So anything beyond that is shown for, I think Councillor Abbott says Trojan horse. In fairness to the developer, and I know what Councillor Abbott means, but they haven't tried to disguise what they are proposing. That's exactly it. But they're not trying to. They're they're not trying to hide the fact of how they envisage the site being developed, but what they are saying is that the care home, the rest of the road, the subspace and everything else would be the subject of other applications in the future. So all that we've been asked to consider with this application is just the position of the access and the first few metres of the road. And then, as Councillor Spray was saying, I think anything else that goes beyond that, so where the road goes, the care home, anything else, that would be subject to further applications in the future, whether that be a further reserved matters application or further full applications. But they would come back, and they would come back to planning committee for consideration, if that helps answer the question.
Councillor Spray?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. That does help. And I think, I mean, in fairness to the developer, they've been to, I think it's 2 planning forums already, and there is, and I know they intend to come to at least one more. So I do think they've been pretty open all the way through about what they want to do on this site, and they have taken various suggestions away from planning forums and so on, and tweaked things. So I'm not, you know, I think it's a little unfair to say that, you know, they're trying to disguise what they're doing. I can't agree with that. So you know, on that basis, I don't really have an issue with this. And I think, as Neil said, and also said in the report, there's again, as with the previous application, there are no calming measures or anything proposed here. But then Highways have said this is accords with their policies. They haven't raised any objections to it. So I'm not sure that actually that we have any grounds to object to it on, you know, on those points. I'll leave it at that at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Schwer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I think it was worthwhile for Councillor Abbott to mention that point, but I think what's really important here is that this is also part of a detailed planning permission in order to ensure that Highways potentially adopt this. But it's also about unlocking this development and getting these houses built, which is actually potentially, you know, what we need across Braintree district as well, because this has been quite a long process. And I think it's obviously very important to consider the detail, but I think with our officers, any future planning application that then comes forward, that where the actual road and where it's indicated and will be agreed for officers, I would have thought have the potential to be able to help the spine road going in the correct place, taking into account the outline planning permission that was one on appeal, with the need for all the green buffers and the biodiversity net gain, and also because the farm has got listed buildings as well. So I think that plays in our favour towards the planning conditions that could potentially go on that further down the line. So I'm quite happy to support planning officer's recommendation on this. Thank you.
Any members wish to contribute to this debate? In which case, if nobody else wants to say anything on this?
In that case, I'm quite happy to move officer's recommendation.
Is that fine, the seconder?
I'll second, thank you.
Okay. So it has been moved by Councillor Schwer, seconded by Councillor Spray, that we grant this application. It is only just for this small area in the red line. All those in favour of granting that? Those against? That is approved. Thank you, members. That brings us to, there are no other items, so that brings us to the end of the agenda this evening. Close the meeting at 9:10. Thank you.